Your government is lying to you, and the mainstream media is helping them do it. That's super dramatic. She's probably just looking for clicks and views. I understand that sentiment, but I dare you. Go ahead and read the headlines right now. Search breaking news, Iran. From ABC News, Iran live updates, Trump says, quote, no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. The more conservative Fox News, Trump says U.S., quote, continues to demolish Iranian forces as video shows American firepower. The super liberal news, MS Now, says Iran live updates, Trump demands Iran's, quote, unconditional surrender. The president vowed that the U.S. and its allies, quote, will work tirelessly to bring Iran back from the brink of destruction. And CBS, which we know now resides in Trump's back pocket, says Hegseth says U.S., quote, just getting started in Iran war as conflict intensifies and spreads. That's fine. Those headlines can say whatever they want. But I've taken the time to do the research, and I've grabbed the numbers, and I've looked at maps, and I am prepared to lay out an argument for all of you that will certainly have you thinking differently than these headlines. First, let's start with the size of both Iran and the United States. Behind me is a map of the United States, and the pink outline is how big Iran is. So as you can see, Iran is much smaller than the United States in the sense that you could probably fit at least two of them inside the United States. But let's talk about square miles versus the number of soldiers they have. Iran is the 17th largest country in the world with a square mileage of 636,372 square miles. The United States is the third largest country with a size of 3,796,742 square miles. In terms of the size of their troops, Iran has roughly 600,000 active troops with an additional 350,000 in reserves, coming to a total of 950,000 troops. But we can't just talk about Iran's troops because they have a number of allies in the Middle East. They have Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, Palestine, Yemen, and various militias throughout Iraq. This all forms together to become something known as the Axis of Resistance, which roughly adds up to between 1 and 1.5 million fighters. On the other hand, the United States has an active duty count of between 1.3 and 1.4 million troops. They also have a reserve and National Guard that adds up to about 770,000 additional troops. And if you can do quick math, you will see that there are roughly 2.1 million fighters, 2.1 million troops for the United States. Keeping in mind that we cannot send all 2.1 million abroad over to the Middle East because we have things like boots on the ground in Ecuador and other parts of the world. In terms of population density, we then need to also look at the size of Iran and the size of the United States versus their number of troops. So in Iran, you have an equivalent of about one soldier for every 1 square mile, whereas in the United States, you have one soldier per every 2.9 square miles, almost 3 miles. So their ratio in Iran is much better. Now that we know all of that math, I want to look at our presence in the Middle East. The United States has roughly 19 military sites and or bases throughout the Middle East, and the map behind me shows a number of them. Both the blue and the red are military sites or bases. The red indicates where in this war we have already been struck, and the blue represents where we have not. There are key bases that we need to pay attention to as this war has begun, and these are Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, Jordan, Iraq, and Israel, which is a brand new site for the United States as of 2026. If you're wondering how much money went into the building of all of these bases and sites across the Middle East, since 9/11, taxpayers like you and I, US citizens who work in the United States, have spent roughly $6.4 trillion on wars and military action throughout just this region alone. Now let's look at the strategy Iran is bringing to these military bases abroad, because there is evidence that is not being talked about very much in the mainstream news to prove that we are in fact losing. Yes, We are losing. Let me explain how I know. So let's talk about what has been attacked so far. We know that in Bahrain, we have the US 5th Fleet headquarters, and there we know that 2 satellite communications terminals and several large buildings have either been destroyed or damaged. We don't have the specific reports on that, but at the very least, they are damaged. We also have, and I'm going to butcher some of these names, I'm so sorry, Camp Arifajan in Kuwait, where we have those 6 reported dead military servicemen and women. I personally believe there are many more than that, but this is what the mainstream media has told us. We also have Ali Al Salam Air Base, which is in Kuwait, and there we had a collapsed rooftop in multiple points caused by strikes from Iran. We have Camp Buring in Kuwait, where a drone exploded in its perimeter. Erbil Air Base in Iraq, where 4 structures were damaged or destroyed, and fires are still burning there. We have Jebel Ali Port in the UAE, where smoke is rising from a building in the U.S. Navy wreck zone. And then we have Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, where $1.1 billion worth of an ANFS-FPS-132 early warning radar system was struck and damaged. In addition, we have also seen several U.S. embassies sustain strikes from Iran, as well as at least one confirmed CIA station. Now, you have to ask yourself, what is the strategy here? What is Iran doing? Because Iran is not at this moment focused on killing American and Israeli troops. They're not. They are taking out specific regions, specific places, specific bases. And what they are doing is they are attacking our communication systems. I had to do a lot more digging, but this is how we know they are trying to make us blind and deaf so we can't know what is going on throughout the Middle East. If we dig a little bit more and search for more facts, here's what you will find. The 5th Fleet headquarters had 2 AN/GSC-52B satellite communications terminals destroyed. These terminals provide high-speed, near real-time connectivity. In Qatar, which is the regional headquarters for Central Command, we saw that a tent surrounded by satellite dishes was destroyed and or damaged. Again, we don't have extensive information on this, but we do know that we had satellite dishes damaged there. Camp Arifjan, again, I'm so sorry, I'm butchering these names, in Kuwait had 3 radomes, protective structures for long-distance communications, either damaged or destroyed. Ali Al Salam in Kuwait had 8 or more buildings near satellite communications infrastructures damaged or destroyed. Again, details are still surfacing about that. In Jordan and the UAE, radar systems for THAAD missile defense batteries worth roughly $500 million have been damaged as well. And on top of this, we are also looking at the possibility of cyber attacks, either at home here in the United States or abroad at some of these military bases. But due to furloughs, because remember, we were getting rid of all the waste, fraud, and abuse in Washington, D.C., our U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency has reduced its capacity, and now we are facing an increasing numbers of Iranian hackers. So yes, Iran and any other of their allies who are in this fight with them are trying to make the United States and Israeli militaries blind and deaf in the middle of a region that is not home to them. This is guerrilla warfare. So then the question becomes, why are we being hit so much? We shouldn't be if we have defense missiles. And here is the reality. It comes down to a simple math problem. The math problem is a word problem, and it says if Iran produces over 100 missiles per month and the US produces 6 to 7 interceptors, which are designed to take out those missiles that are incoming from Iran, can you win a war? The math answer is no. So then according to that math problem, you have to think as a taxpayer, is this war even worth it from a financial perspective? Because we taxpayers are funding the war with our tax money. And according to that math problem, we can't out-defend Iranian offensive missiles. And if you look at the spend, you'll learn that offensive missiles typically cost a few $1,000s to make, which in the world of war is just a few pennies. Whereas defensive missiles, the ones that we're trying to create, that we can only create 6 to 7 of per month, because they are so complex, they're also incredibly expensive. They cost millions of dollars. So every time we shoot one of those off, we are quite literally burning through millions of dollars. Okay, so it doesn't look like missiles are going to work out in our favor. What about putting troops on the ground? Because Hegseth hasn't ruled out those boots on the ground invasion type of operations. Knowing the number of soldiers per square mile in Iran and knowing their military capabilities in terms of missiles, can we invade them? The answer is no. If we tried to even put 100,000 troops on the ground to invade Iran, it would be a bloodbath. Those people would die, and they would die quickly. And if you want to argue the point that, yeah, we could get them on the ground, my question would be how? Because you're going to get struck by a missile before you can even drop them off. And even if you were able to drop them off, you really think that our troops and Israeli troops stand a chance against a massive military force who has been for 30 years preparing for this very moment, knowing what Netanyahu has wanted to do, and who is very familiar with the landscape of Iran and the environment and the climate and all of the other things? We would be utterly destroyed. It would be a suicide mission. What happens next? What does this mean? I can't tell you 100% for certain because we're dealing with Trump and Netanyahu, both of whom are narcissists who exist in this sort of alternate reality where they are simply power hungry, money hungry, oil hungry, and want to stay out of prison. So they will keep this going as long as physically possible. They don't care how many people die or fall in this war because they don't have that mental capacity or that empathy. It is all about them and playing Battleship, I guess, or a video game with real life human beings and real life money and real life resources. Okay? But what I can tell you for sure what you can expect here on the home front. Number one, it is costing taxpayers in the United States $900 million each and every day that this war wages on. That means we are fronting the bill of billions of dollars per week. That's one thing. As a result, you're going to see different things happen. You can expect a gallon of gas to cost anywhere from $4 to $5. You can expect renewed inflation, which is going to have MAGA supporters, even if it's not externally, internally rethinking their votes, because the Biden excuse will eventually wear out, even for them. We can expect that there may be cyber attacks on water or power grids. That's because CISA, again, is super understaffed, and they're using any efforts they have in that overseas to try and get military forces the information that they need. They're not worried about home, and there aren't enough people to worry about both. We can also expect to see domestic terrorist attacks and overall massive bills across the board. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. This is not good. The government is lying to you. The mainstream media is allowing it to happen and helping them out.